We really value your feedback. We would like to thank Arts Council England for supporting these online conferences, as well as our partners, including UK Music, the Incorporated Society of Musicians, the Musicians Union, Music Mark, the Music Industry Association, Creative United, Leicestershire Music Education Hub, and James, the Joint Audio Media Education Services, as well as everyone participating in the panels and the presentations. Just before I hand over to Dave Ward and get things going, I'm just going to go over the housekeeping, which I'm sure you're all very well versed in by now. Please use the chat for asking questions, talking to each other and networking. We'll be monitoring the chat and we'll bring some of the bigger questions to the floor at the end of each session. Please just be respectful and polite at all times. So tonight we have two more great sessions, starting with an introduction by Dave Ward, the Managing Director of TiME, who will be introducing Mary Alice Stack, who is the Chief Executive at Creative United, who will be part of the first panel discussions about accessible music technology. This will last until about 4:50, when we'll pause for a short break. Then at about 5:05, we'll reconvene for an exciting series of presentations from people who are inventing new music products, music technology products, and they'll tell us about their work and what's in the pipeline for the future. We're looking at finishing at about 6 o'clock. So with no further ado, please let me introduce you to Dave Ward.
Hi everyone, welcome to our third seminar. Before we start, can I just introduce you to Kate Rounding, who's our TiME Development Director. Kate is a flautist, sound engineer, a project director, and keeps everything ticking over. So say hello, Kate.
Hello, hi, nice to be here.
Okay. There's lots of wonderful things happening all around the world in music technology, and we're trying to bring as many of them together for people to become aware of. So our mission in TiME is to raise awareness of all this wonderful work that's going on, and really make a common space for people to communicate with each other about this. We're all very painfully aware of the restrictions that COVID has put upon us. But in this series, I want to really be thinking about the future when hopefully COVID is gone, and look at all the potential that we can get up to. I'd like to introduce our special guest tonight, Mary Alice Stack, who is the Chief Executive of Creative United. And Mary has been working tirelessly to promote adaptive music technology. So Mary, hi.
Hello, David. Thank you.
And Mary, before we start, can you tell us a little bit about Creative United and where it comes from and what you do?
Yeah. So Creative United is a community interest company. We were established in 2012. And we've been focused primarily in terms of the music sector in making the purchase of musical instruments more affordable through a scheme called Take It Away. So before Creative United came into being, I was working at Arts Council England for a number of years, where the Take It Away scheme started. And that initiative, as I said, was really designed around financial inclusion. So how could we reduce the barriers to participation in music by making the purchase of instruments more affordable? And since we've established Creative United to take on and develop that scheme further, in the last few years in particular, we've been looking at other barriers to participation in music. So where the finance barrier still exists, but there are additional barriers to participation, which may be to do with the use of the instruments themselves. So not so much the cost, but if you have a physical impairment, perhaps the instrument, a standard issue musical instrument, may actually be inaccessible to you. And if that is the barrier, how can we go about supporting the industry to respond to that challenge, to make it possible for everyone to participate, no matter what their particular physical differences might be, as well as their capacity to pay. So we look at those two things. Creative United as a business works right across the creative industry. So the music sector is one part of what we do. And our broad mission is around making the arts and creativity as inclusive as possible, to supporting creative enterprise to develop and grow, and to making sure that the arts and cultural and heritage sectors are valued and understood by policymakers, by investors, so that collectively we have a much, much stronger, more inclusive and powerful sector, which is, as we all know, one of the great strengths of this country is our creative industries. So we have a very broad brief, but within that, music making, participation and access and inclusion is one of the key areas in which we focus our time and attention.
Thank you, that's wonderful. Most people, or a lot of people, are not aware of the whole spectrum, the breadth of work in special needs and disabilities. Can you tell us a little bit about the adaptive instruments that that are not in production but are in development, a lot of them?
Yes, so I need to really, at this point, pay credit to the organisations that we work in partnership with, because a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last few years has been built on the amazing work of organisations like Drake Music and the OMI Trust, who have pioneered innovation in musical instrument design and technology. And what Creative United has done really is to try and add its weight to making those innovations and adaptive instruments and assistive equipment more visible to potential users. So when we started our journey in this particular area of work, I was really unaware of the existence of anything much in terms of adaptive instruments, specialist equipment that might be designed to make music making easier and more inclusive. And I was fortunate to be introduced to the OMI Trust, the One-Handed Musical Instrument Trust, which I'm sure many of you will know about. They have, for many years, run an annual competition, which has inspired engineers and makers in the sector to come up with new solutions, particularly for people with physical impairments. And Drake Music, also through the DM Labs initiative, has done incredible work working on a more bespoke basis with individual musicians to try and give them as much flexibility and freedom as possible. And what we did last year was we went out to our network and we said, okay, well, look, what are those products? What's been produced already that is replicable and scalable and commercially accessible? Is there anything? Or are there just lots and lots of prototypes that we could collate and share, so that people aren't perhaps reinventing the wheel? If there's an existing prototype that works, they can make an inquiry and build out from that base. So the first thing that we did really was an exercise in information gathering. We put together the first ever published a guide to buying adaptive instruments and equipment, and that is currently available as a PDF document from our website. I think, David, you've been kind enough to share the link to that in the information for this event. So that document, as simple as it is a list of around 80 or 90 products that have either been developed fully and gone into commercial production, or have been prototyped and are awaiting further commercial investment and development, or are pieces of equipment or technology that in themselves may not have been designed with accessibility in mind, but we know that they can be used in combination with other instruments to achieve the outcome that musicians want. And this is very, very important, because although we have designed the guide as being you know, a guide if you need something particular to assist you as a disabled person, in fact, what we're really doing is building up a resource and a directory of equipment that could be used by anyone in order to develop their musicality and their performance in the way that they wish. So it's not an exclusive list for disabled musicians. It's a list of products and technologies that open up music making to more people. And that's really the primary objective, is about making everyone able to make music in the way that works for them. And that could well be by picking up something that was designed for a different audience, but in fact for you as an individual is the perfect solution. So the guide as it stands is just a first attempt at bringing that information together. This year, we plan to produce a second edition, and that we hope will be a more interactive, digitally driven version that can be added to on a regular basis and hosted on a centralized website somewhere. But for now, we're inviting people to look at that guide, tell us what's missing, tell us what's been developed in the last 12 months since we published it, because new things are coming on the market all the time. And what we'd really like to do is to be able to demonstrate to the industry very, very clearly that there is demand for these products, that we're not innovating in a vacuum, we're innovating in response to need. And where we can join the dots between the need and the demand and the production line, we then have the potential to really improve the availability of these products, because as you said, many of them are still prototype and they're not very accessible in terms of ordering. They're accessible because they're accessible instruments, but they may not be readily available, and that is a major problem.
Yes, I was learning, that 3D printing is helping an awful lot in this, in the building of these instruments. Thank you very much, Mary Alice. And that, as Mary Alice said, that guide is there are links on the front of the TiME website that you can download that PDF. And in fact, there are going to be lots of links on there to everybody's work who's involved in this webinar, and they will appear in the next few days. I'd like to introduce the other members of our panel. I'll say a little bit about them. They can say hi, and then please remember to put any questions in the chat that you have for the panel. I would just like to say that Emmy Ward, unfortunately, who was working with multiple and profound learning difficulties, is not able to be with us. But we're planning many more of these events, and I'm sure she will be with us then. Irene Lococo. Irene is therapist, innovator, and a music technology researcher at Chiltern Music Therapy. Wave hello, Irene.
Hi, David. Hi, everyone. Really nice to be here today.
Amy Dickens is a researcher in accessible music technology. I know that Amy has got bags and bags full of different devices and things, but she's moving house at the moment, so they're all packed up. And I'm looking forward to doing a webinar where we can look at all these different devices, Amy.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, David. And I probably have quite a few to add to your list, Mary Alice, so I'll get to that after this.
Simon Glenister. Simon founded and runs an organization called Noise Solution that is doing wonderful work with people who probably, shall we say, Simon, have dropped, in some ways, have dropped through the cracks. And Simon in his studio,
facing challenges.
Sorry, say that again. Sorry.
Young people facing a multiple array of challenges. Yes,
that's the way of putting it. Thank you. And we shall be talking to Simon about that and the work that he does. Tim Yates is here. Tim is the Research and Development Officer for Drake Music, which many of you will have heard about. But I shall be asking Tim in a while to tell us more about the work of Drake. Say hi, Tim.
Hi, folks. Lovely to be here.
And Emily Grimes. Emily, say hi.
Hi, everybody from No.3. Nice to be here with you.
Thank you, Emily. Emily works with a lot of people who probably have brain damage. Is that correct?
So yeah, I work with a lot of different clients across different age groups, disabilities, abilities, and yeah, really looking towards the future and where assistive technology, adaptive instruments and the use of technology can really benefit our work. So yeah, I work with people with brain injury. A lot of, when you mentioned PMLD, a lot of our clients that have PMLD, this would be great for. So really looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. Emily works with No.3, the organization that in many ways started to pioneer music therapy. So we'll come to that, come back to that later on. As Richard said, after the break, we're going to have quite a lot of people who are going to demonstrate the work and the technology that they have. And with this group, we're going to talk about as well about the technology that, that they are using. And can I start, Irene, can I start with you to tell us a bit more about children music therapy and what you do?
Yes, of course. Well, Children's Music Therapy, we are a non-for-profit organization, and we provide music therapy services and community music services across the UK and to a huge range of people with different needs. We've been doing this for almost 10 years now, and our amazing founders, Rebecca and Rosie, who many of you know, have set up this organization, and it's grown exponentially since then. We have 50 plus therapists and community musicians around the country. And innovation has always been part of the organizational pillars, so it's a very important thing that we work on, and we've been researching over the years the ways in which we can apply music technology within our work, and applying very much the same clinical rigor that we would apply to any other resource that we use in music therapy. So that's a very important part of the things that we do, the way we do around apply music technology. Yeah, so that's basically a little snapshot of where we stand and what we do with music tech.
Can you say a little bit about what technology you're actually using and researching at the moment?
Sure. Well, I'm the music technology lead, and with that, I have a very fun and exciting role, which includes researching and trialing lots of different technologies that come our way. It's really exciting to get to trial things and think of the clinical aspects that could be helpful for. So we do a series of assessments to any technologies that we start working on, and then we have an amazing team always ready to trial this with our clients. And when that's assessed to be helpful, which not always is, but when it does, then it becomes one of our recommended technologies. A little bit like what Mary Alice was saying earlier today, maybe a technology that was not meant to have anything to do with therapy suddenly becomes a therapeutic tool when it's used with the right purposes. So that's what we're trying to channel, the bridge that we're trying to work towards. And we've been working with various developers as well in the creation and kind of the trialing of their own platforms and music tech kits that we use in our sessions, and providing them with valuable clinical feedback as well. And we're also working on a few research projects related to the application of musical technology, either digitally or in face-to-face scenarios.
Thank you so much. Tim, Drake Music. Drake Music, we know, has this vision for a world where disabled people have the same range of opportunities as everybody else. Can you tell us a bit more about Drake's work?
Sure. So Drake is a charity we've been running for about 25 years, and we're a National Arts Council portfolio organisation, and we work in lots of different areas actually across music, tech and disability. So we run accessible music workshops and music making sessions and training with music hubs all across the country. And various different ensembles and those kinds of things. We also have an arts and collaboration strand where we support disabled artists and promote their work with, career advice and career support. We also commission work and we put on events to provide a platform for those artists. And the third strand that I run is the R&D strand, where we're working to develop and promote new accessible musical instruments in music tech, which is a huge job, as Mary Alice and everybody said. There's a lot of work to be done, but lots of really exciting stuff happening at the moment. It's a really great time actually in this area. And the big project that we're working on at the moment for that is something called the Accessible Musical Instrument Collection, which goes hand in hand with what Mary Alice is doing with all the information she's gathering. At the moment, if you're looking for accessible music tech, there isn't anywhere to go to try out all of the accessible music tech that there is, which is obviously a major problem. And so we are going to be building that resource over the next few years to try and gather as much of this stuff in one place as possible and make it as an available resource for everybody who's working in this area, to find a way to really kind of gather all of this stuff and make it available to people. There's lots of great work being done, but it's often being done in bubbles. And, an individual maker will be making a fantastic instrument for an individual musician, but that instrument never gets out to the wider world. It never has the impact that it could have. And so we really want to build a platform where all of that kind of work and all of the other work that everybody here is doing has a place to kind of be shared and to really make the impact that it can make. So that's the work that we're really focused on over the next few years.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Simon, can you tell us a little bit about Noise Solution and your work?
Absolutely.
And also how you involve whole families or the family with your work.
Sure. So Noise Solutions been around for 11 years now. And it grew out of my experiences of somebody who worked in local authority, working for organisations like youth offending, working with young people in all sorts of challenging circumstances. It's grown now to being one of the UK's top 100 performing social enterprises. We tend to work with young people on very, very negative trajectories, who often have a history of non-engagement with mental health teams or social services, and those organisations refer to us. We pair them with a music producer, and we run them through a mentoring program. That mentoring program is informed by something called self-determination theory, which is arguably one of the world's most well-evidenced approaches to impacting on well-being and motivation. We're interested as an organisation in motivation and well-being, well-being specifically, because we know if we impact on well-being, the evidence is unequivocal. We get better health, social, education, engagement outcomes. Okay, so that's the focus, and we run them through normally a 10-week program, and that's that program, or the progress of that program, is captured. The highlights of it are captured on a digital cloud-based platform that we've developed over the last 5 years, that basically creates an individual story, a narrative, a feed, a social media feed, if you like, of that young person's journey through the mentoring process week by week, with lots of rich video reflection on how they feel about the process. That young person is able to invite into that feed parents, carers, social workers, care coordinators, whoever the significant adults are in their life. What we're doing is capturing them being competent at something that's culturally responsive to their interests, i.e. making whatever music they want to make, is capturing it, taking it outside of their head, externalizing it for them where they can see it on this digital feed, and allowing parents and carers and whoever the adults are that they care about, whose opinions they care about, to also see it and comment on it. So they get these validating messages from other people. That's about promoting a sense of relatedness. Relatedness is a key psychological need that we know is massively important to well-being and motivation, and it enables the young person to build a new narrative about themselves as being good at something, often against a backdrop where everybody else is telling them that everything is going wrong. They can create this new digital feed where they're being good at something, and project that outwards easily and safely onto the screens of these other adults. At the same time, that digital platform is also capturing and analysing, using academic methodologies, nationally benchmarkable NHS well-being metrics, so we can understand how much the organisation is having an impact on well-being, this thing that we know is really, really important to these outcomes. And what we've seen now is 3 years of massively, massively statistically significant impacts on well-being. Over lockdown, what we've done is adapt that platform to enable us to enable that platform to be the method of delivery as well. So what we've done is integrated Zoom into that platform so that musicians can connect with vulnerable young people. And then we've built in the use of an online door using VIP's Charanga instance. So they've got an online recording studio that they can connect and talk to over Zoom as well. And what we're starting to see is that the impacts on well-being of that are as statistically significant as the face-to-face impacts we've had over the last 3 years.
Thank you, Simon. And the evidence that you are building is essential and really, really useful, particularly when all of us in our organizations are trying to raise awareness in government departments.
Well, that's the nut I've been trying to crack for the last 5 years, is to take the woolly out of art's impact. All of your organizations need to be able to demonstrate impact. If you don't demonstrate it and capture it, it didn't happen. What we've built is an online cloud-based approach to doing that takes out the need for an external evaluator to come in and look. It's creating case studies created by the participants that we work with their user voice genuinely at the center of what's going on, that's co-produced by them and their families and their key workers.
Wonderful, thank you. Amy, you've been researching technology for quite a long time now. Can you tell us a bit about your work?
Sure, yeah. I've been working towards a PhD thesis in accessible digital musical instruments since 2015. It's been a long time coming and I'm still working on that thesis, but any of those who've taken a doctorate on hand will understand the trials and tribulations of such a thing. But yeah, it's something that I've done in-person research with different communities in the UK. Taking different instruments to young people with all kinds of different abilities and kind of trialing and erroring, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't work, pulling up problems and following them all the way through their journey from creating right through to performing. So actually in 2016, I was really privileged to take part in the BBC Proms with a group of young people called the Able Orchestra. And we took some tech there. I took a technology probe that I built as part of my PhD research there. And we kind of saw what did and didn't work and what held up to actual performance arena kind of things as well. Because you've got to remember with technology, it's not just about, is it accessible? Can I mess around and learn on it? But can I perform on it? Can I have the same experience? Can I be virtuous with it? And those are the challenges as well, to provide that equitable experience. So very much what I've been doing for the last 5 years. And now I've actually moved into being an accessibility consultant for software music software technology. So I'm working with a couple of well-known clients in the industry on things that I can't talk about in the open yet, but just know that the big players in the industry really care about accessibility and are starting to make headway there. And I'm helping them do that, and I'm fighting the fight there. So taking that knowledge and transferring it across into industry, hopefully.
Thank you so much. Emily, can you tell us a little about Nordoff Robbins and about the work you're doing, particularly what technology you're using? The Emily Ward was going to talk a bit about people with profound and multiple learning difficulties, many people won't be aware of what that is. So perhaps you could tell us what that is and explain it a bit for us.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, for Northrop Robbins, as much of the world has had to go online this last year. So a lot of our services that we would have had in our centres across the country, from London, kind of Manchester, Scotland, and Newcastle, we have had to shut our centres and move everything online. So we've now managed to bring an online choir via Zoom, like we are now, for people, for anybody that wants to be able to access that, regardless of age, disability, ability, location. We've got people from all around the world that are able to Zoom in and attend our choir session online. We've got our preschool groups online. We've got an adults with learning disability group. But really that's kind of based on the fact that people have instruments there and that they can make music. And Northrop Robbins is very much a therapy that is based in the music, and we look for change and to support people through making music. So we're really, really keen on delving more into the world of technology and adapted instruments to be able to work with people. And something that we've been doing, like yourself, Irene, at Chiltern, is a lot of research and trialing these instruments. So we've been working with some different companies. So that comes to mind is the Mash Machine, which is a box with kind of different bits and pieces, tiles that you can move around and create and interact with music. My colleague and I, we managed to look at a very kind of prototype stage, like you said, Mary Alice, at very kind of prototype stages at this point of being able to get rid of that lag. And I know, David, we spoke about 5G and how that might affect and the way that we are able to work in the future. But really, really looking at how we can work with our clients and beyond. And you mentioned about PMLD, so individuals with profound and multiple learning disabilities. I work with a lot of clients who have a lot of equipment, so wheelchair based a lot of the time, with very, very restricted movement, sometimes understanding as well. So really getting adapted instruments and being able to make music on a level that they can really understand. So things like Soundbeam have been around for a long, long time, and kind of understanding that cause and effect of how people can use technology to make sound, how they can use their bodies to make sound. So I'm really interested in hearing some of the stuff that you guys have got a bit later. But thinking about the actual accessibility of that. And for a lot of the clients that I work with, perhaps their arms are very, very tight and close in to their body. So, you know, using iPads with some of our clients is a fantastic way of making music. You know, they're really thin, they're light, they're easily to transport around. But actually, when you've got really, really high muscle tone and you're unable to even get to that iPad, and what do you do then? And just really kind of looking at how you can provide musical experience that you're not just doing something to somebody, really giving people that autonomy in their music making. And that's something that we're really, really interested in. So yeah, it's what's around and what's available that we can bring to as many of our clients as possible.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Such a depth and of all the work that's doing, and it's giving us a very good example of the breadth of all this work and the needs in these areas. Richard, are there a few questions for our panel on the chat?
Yes, absolutely. Well, one of the first questions actually, what is the NHS Wellbeing Matrix? Does anyone know about the NHS Wellbeing Matrix? Perhaps that's one for Simon, I don't know.
Sorry, I got called away. Childcare. Sorry.
Yeah, just a question which I think you might be well placed to answer. Do you, anything on the NHS Wellbeing Matrix?
Yeah. So we use the Warwick and Edinburgh Wellbeing Scale. You need to start this from understanding that there is no perfect way to measure well-being, right? There is no perfect answer to this question. We are always looking for a subjective response to a bunch of questions, right? well-being is really interesting in that it's a beautiful way to talk to lots of different audiences, but there's a lot of white noise about it and people don't really understand it, and they don't take the time to do the reading about it. There's actually a lot of great academic evidence in understanding what well-being is and the impacts it can have. And essentially, historically, there have been two strands of thought about well-being. And what constitutes well-being. The first being hedonic well-being, which is immediate gratification and sense of competence, and the other is eudaimonic well-being, which is sense of how well we feel we're performing in the circles we exist in. So how well we feel we perform at home or at school or societally as a whole. The Warwick and Edinburgh well-being scale asks a bunch of questions about those domains, and it uses something called a Likert scale. So you have the same answers to each for each question, which means you can attribute a value to each of those. So you get a summed score at the end, and you do these. You ask these questions at the beginning and at the end of whatever your intervention is, and you've got a journey travelled kind of situation going on. It's often misunderstood and people try to use it as a diagnostic tool for individuals, but it's not. It's about looking at a population and impact on well-being across a population. You've got to have at least 30 responses to it for it to be useful. When I talk about it being benchmarkable, one of the reasons we're really interested in it is because it's been used really widely. We've got collated the answers to that same scale from multiple organisations across the UK. We've got 60,000 responses we can draw on, which creates a national average wellbeing score that we can automatically compare what we're doing against. So rather than as an organisation just making a scale up and going, you've got to trust us, you've got a validated academic tool that's nationally benchmarkable that means that people can more readily believe what you're doing. But I always say it's not a perfect tool. It's, for us as an organization, it's a steer on how much impact on well-being we're having. It's beautiful because we can look demographically about where we're having the most impact. So for Noise Solution, it turns out 14 to 18-year-old young women is where we have the most impact. We have twice as much impact with those young women than we do with young men, which is fascinating in and of itself, and a whole PhD thesis on its own.
That's fantastic. There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack there. Is it best just to sort of Google NHS wellbeing?
I put in the answer that I put to somebody a link to Warwick and Edinburgh. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of reading that you need to do around it to genuinely make use of it, but I'm happy to answer questions if anybody's got any.
Fantastic. Another question is how everyone sort of finds out about new technology which is coming through. Is there a central resource that people look at or follow to find out about how people are using different tech? That's a bit of a tricky question. Who should we start with? Irene, how do you find out about all these fantastic new apps that you come across? Where do you find out about all these apps? Because I like to think I know quite a bit, but there's apps there I've never heard of which are absolutely brilliant. How do you find them?
There's hours and hours of searching and navigating things, and yeah, I wish there was one place to go to get all this information, but in real life it's hours of our kind of research, looking and trialing and getting some news, even just reading through music technology magazines and seeing a new device and saying, oh wow, that looks quite cool, and then touching base with those organizations to see if we can get hold of one sample to start trialing it. And those kind of things are the ways in which we can kind of get hold of kits, and when it's a much more kind of bigger thing. But the apps, yeah, certainly is just looking out there everywhere pretty much.
And you were doing a newsletter or something on an app of the month or something? What was it you were doing?
Yeah, we did for a while last year, because part of the work we do, we kind of have this policy of sharing and spreading the knowledge as much as possible. So throughout the pandemic, we've been doing monthly sharing of the recommendations of things that we've been using on a daily basis. So where it's apps, where it's music kits, or anything that we found useful within the clinical setting, and yeah, sharing with the wider community.
That's really useful. So we should keep our eyes on the Chorlton Music Therapy news area of the page. And we've got those links on the TiME website as well. So there's cross-fertilization, with knowledge is being spread there. Tim, how do you find out about new things which are coming through?
Well, it's a tricky thing. I think in a similar kind of way, there isn't a central place. Often, we get people get in touch with us, or we stumble across something online, or there's a lot of stumbling across things at the moment, which is nice when you do stumble across things, but it is a bit of a problem if you're trying to kind of when you're trying to find things. It's very inefficient. And so I think one of the important things that we collectively need to do is to gather all of this information in one place. And I think it's really, really important, because there is so much out there, but if it isn't, as Mary asked, if it isn't available to people and isn't affordable and you can't actually get it, it's not doing its job. And so I think that's one of the central challenges that we kind of collectively face.
There's a couple of things here, Richard. There's in our sister organisation, James, where we're in touch with lots and lots of the universities. We're starting to collate from them the work that they're doing, and in time we're going to be collating this work worldwide now, so that and we can disseminate that information quite clearly. There are lots of people who are not here with us today who we should acknowledge, the Clarion people, of course, and I wanted to point out as well that in the future we hope to have a lots more of these webinars where we can give space to all of these people to share their work.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters. There's duplication on where the information is being shared. So if it's in the Drake collection, that's great. If it's on the TiME website, that's great. I think the more places it is where people can find it, the better. Emily, I'd never heard of the Mash Machine. Is that from Australia?
No, I believe the team is actually based in Estonia, but they've been looking around Europe and bringing them into kind of shopping malls and really making it not just a disability aid, but really making it accessible for non-musicians to be able to make music. And I think that what goes hand in hand with that research of what else is out there is making those connections and events like this of networking and finding out what people are doing and really just making those friendships and connections. Yeah, so it's incredible what is out there when you start looking.
Yeah. I mean, there was a couple of things. I mean, the as you say, instruments which have been built, which haven't necessarily been put into the SND sort of category. One that comes to mind is the Theramini, which is a great battery-operated Theramini that sits on the arms of a wheelchair. Brilliant. Okay, so that works. There's no leads because it's battery, and there's a bit of physiotherapy with moving your arm up and down. There's a chap called Jacob, who's one of the participants here in the background, who's produced a fantastic a new musical instrument called the Orba. So the Artifon Orba is certainly worth checking out, with 10 different gesture controls, very well priced. That's certainly a new one to let people know about. Ben, you're there. Can I just pull you into the conversation as well here with your knowledge? I know your finger is very much on the pulse of new tech.
Yeah, I mean, as I was putting in the chat, I mean, there's, like everyone says, there's long since been a need to pull all this information together, and it's great that the guys at Drake are doing that. I mean, I would say that Drake's site has always been a kind of first stop if you're looking for things, but it's as everyone has sort of echoed, this has spread very much wider than it was, say, 12, 15 years ago when we started, and that this is kind of a pervasive drive in a lot of technology and a lot of creative people out there. And as was just kind of mentioned, it's not just necessarily about accessibility for disability, but making music and creativity more accessible to people, which obviously, throughout the lockdown, and people have very much realized, this is hugely, hugely important for mental health and well-being, as we've been talking about. So, even now, just things like, Music Tech Fest, searching online like that. Apple's own, the App Store itself has, for accessibility, regularly curated lists of apps and stuff that is recommended and supported through them. Google does the same. They have a bunch of resources. It's not quite as hidden as it used to be, although it still needs collated. And it is often, I mean, I think one thing that sometimes comes up is as a lot of new instruments are also, presented as this is making things accessible, and so there's it can become quite noisy in that sense. So I think having professionals like Tim, people like, the actual practitioners and the the educators feeding into with actual kind of what Emily's been talking about, with actual almost case study, real user life stories, and that's what people really need to see. Because there's loads of great tech. We've been doing stuff for years. Loads of people doing stuff for years. In huge different ways, because there is no one answer as well. That's another really important thing. It's really about having an open mind and saying, right, well, what can we first, what's available? And I think one of the biggest things is, particularly for educators, is actually opening the cupboards in the place that you're in. And I've been in countless schools and departments where you arrive to do a demonstration and you're like, well, let's have a look at what you've got. And they're like, what do you mean? And you open the cupboard and there's a bunch of stuff in there. Chaos pads, you got this, and they're like, oh, okay, we didn't, and so it's really kind of, I suppose, grasping that this and saying, right, well, what have we got? And then what do we need to augment that and help bring more young people into music making? Because that's what it's all about. And
perhaps there's an issue there on training as well, on how you use some of this stuff and how you use it to its best advantage. Do you offer training on Skoog?
Yeah, I mean, we do Skoog or wider training now. I mean, we've been through a whole arc where we've started a new venture called Playable Technology, where we still support accessible music making and still support Skoog, but we're also now offering our expertise over the last kind of 15 years, from developing technology, implementing it, developing content, developing curriculum, and offering that to organizations, educators, or even individuals. So, and we do a lot of stuff online, and that's that's great to kind of be able to start doing that now as well. Because it is hugely diverse, which for some people coming in from education, that might be really quite challenging, where you're in a position where, well, we need to increase our provision. What do we do? And that can be quite difficult. And then there's interfacing with are you an iOS school? Are you an Android school? Do you have Chromebooks? But I think the thing that a lot of maybe music teachers and educators should really embrace is that the technology community is there for you and is really keen to help and are happy to kind of, so it's, if you just reach out and ask a question, if you go onto Arcane Instruments site and post in their chat, send a message straight, send a message to us, speak to the people at Artifon, whatever it is, they want to know. We want to hear what and almost always you'll get a response. They'll help and provide information in lots of different ways. So I suppose one thing is about really taking that step and engaging with it, and putting yourself out there and finding out, and part of that will be finding out what you have access to with your music service or as well. I mean, the music hubs as well, in terms of interfacing with different educators or different service provisions or different healthcare, they are a resource. They're there. They've been evolving, and they're waiting to be asked that question, and they should be able to answer it as well.
That's fantastic. Some really good information there, Ben.
I'm very conscious of time, and we'll be talking more with Ben about Skoog later on. One question, particularly for the practitioners here, would be, what would be the dream piece of technology that you wish was available?
To me,
Irene?
or Irene?
Yeah, I think as music therapists, our dream technologies are all of those who help us enhance our clients' potential, whether it's on a cognitive or an expressive, emotional, or communicational level. And I think that because we work with such a variety of people with so many different needs, there's never going to be one piece of technology that will kind of cover everything. But definitely what the dream is about accessibility and having the possibility of having those technologies available to everyone, and just give them that possibility to make their life brighter with these technologies. So that's the dream, I think.
Thank you. Emily?
I think something that I would be really interested to hear your guys' opinion is exactly, that kind of case study that I said earlier on of someone who has really, really restricted mobility. but has that desire, that will, that want to make music. And how can that happen? I mean, I'm not my brain doesn't work like you guys, but you know, maybe like a kind of, you know, a blanket or something that's really flexible that can really, I mean, I just putting it into a more kind of practical term, someone that has very limited or little movement, wind chimes, the set of wind chimes would give a huge effect to a very little cause. So having something that can really be reactive and not just a start and a stop of a loop, that's brilliant, and to be able to succeed in music is great, but to be creative in I mean, what they're able to do.
Emily, there are, I mean, this is, I would say the dream piece of technology is what Tim's doing, is some, and what David is doing is somewhere to bring this technology together, because I could list you 20 or 30 things, including stuff that we're doing and case studies that do exactly what you're looking for, and you know, evidence of students starting from doing nothing, having high muscle tone, work in a chair, to performing in an orchestra. And it's not just with Skoog, and it's not just with Soundbeam, and it's not just with whatever it is. This is happening all over the place, but it is siloed, as Tim's saying. And if there was, in terms of technology, if there was a website or, you know, a place you could go and say, right, we have students with these needs, you know, and it was, I think it being searchable on the basis of some general criteria of kind of, you know, physical and maybe cognitive needs in terms of assessment, then that would really help, you know, help everyone so much in terms of the, you know, cutting down the research time and everything, and actually be able to go, oh great, look, there's this, and look, there's a story of, you know, a high functioning autistic kid, or there's a story of a student with cerebral palsy who's done this, and this. That looks relevant, and you know, it's all there, you know, and it's evolving all the time, but there's so much there already.
Exactly, and that's perhaps that's the facility that we can all start to build together, which would be wonderful. Amy, we're very short on time now, but what would your dream be?
In terms of piece of technology, well, firstly, I echo what everybody's been saying, and that has been a majority of what my work on my thesis has been about silos and not repeating things in different communities time and time again, and having somewhere where we can have a shared resource for this kind of information to help people get to music making quicker, because that's what I want. My dream piece of technology would be plug in and play. It would have amazing tailorability. Give me options, people. Give me lots of options in terms of sensitivity, in terms of ways that I can interact with it. And it would be very, very robust. So all of those things, and they're difficult to find, and there is no one size fits all. But definitely I found tailorability is the way that it gives more access. The more I can tweak a few settings here and there and give this one piece of technology to several people, the more viable it is to pay a higher price for it, to invest in it more, to spend more time getting to know it. So yeah, there's a couple of things that I would look for, but mainly as well, just plug in and play. I just want to make music. Don't give me a whole manual that's like 400 pages long. I want music, and everybody else does too.
And I think that's the theme for everybody's work. It's to do with fun and playing, and we learn and we develop as human beings by playing, and definitely playing music. We do have to finish this session now.
David, just beforehand, David, Simon's just got a question there. Something you'd like to add in, Simon?
It's not a question. It's just some stuff that I'm really interested in at the moment in terms of that dream piece of technology. So the biggest issue we've been facing at the moment is digital poverty and access to kit, right? Everybody's been facing that. So the thing that I'm really interested in at the moment is the fact that we've got 99% penetration with phones across the population. And I'm really interested in VR as something that's eminently tweakable and adaptable. And what I'm pursuing at the moment is the ability to, we know we can use phones as an AR device. Why can't we be using these to create music sessions within a VR environment? There are already websites where you can plug in VR from different places into the same space, where we could have interactive music making going on. I saw the most amazing YouTube video the other day with a clip-on thing on the back of the head of a VR headset where you could control it with your mind by focusing in areas. So limited movement and just eye focus was the thing controlling it. This is the future. That's the stuff that the use of mobile, which I think is essential, and VR technology I'm really excited about.
Thank you, Simon. That's really great. VR and AR technology is an area that we really want to build up our knowledge in and make part of another webinar, a whole webinar. We get once again a whole idea here of the spectrum of work that's going on and what people are doing. So I would really like to thank all our panel here, and thank you, Mary Alice, for that introduction. We're going to take a break now for about 5 minutes. Some of our panel will be back demonstrating some of the stuff they're working on. So see you all in 5 minutes' time.